Our movie begins when a homemade fertilizer infects a swarm of wasps. They begin to mutate into giant creatures that kill everything in their path. Julia to spill coffee on. She changes her shirt while talking about feeling anxious about running the business, and Paul can't help but be distracted by her assets. Later, they arrive at the estate and Julia takes Paul's phone to ensure that he'd focus on the job. Just then, Flora, Julia's family friend, welcomes them into the mansion while Julia works in the kitchen with Flora. Paul and chases after Percy. Paul then resumes his work, but a wasp suddenly flies by him and causes him to topple over a chair. Infuriated, he tries killing the insect but only ends up breaking the glasses close to it. Julia then appears and reminds Paul to be professional. Meanwhile, Paul is cautious about his surroundings because of the wasp, and he even tells Julia to warn Sydney about it. Just then, he tells him where the first aid kit is. She also tosses him the van's keys, telling him to move the vehicle to the back of the house. Julia's lack of concern pisses Paul. He sarcastically imitates her voice as soon as she leaves. After this, he moves the van and mends his wound. Suddenly, Paul spots a wasp, so he squashes it. Just then Larry approaches him devilishly, asking if he wants to get a little high. The two then sneak out to smoke. But when Paul notices a creepy gynecologist bothering Julia, he immediately goes to her. Later on, Sydney gives an awkward speech to his guests. Meanwhile, the wasps are startled. While Sydney still figures out which key to use, he manages to find it at the last minute, allowing the group to be momentarily safe. As they try to figure out their next move, Carruthers grabs a bottle of wine and Paul helps him open it with a special trick. Carruthers then notices how he busts into the basement's window only to be greeted by Sydney, who's almost finished mutating. Paul quickly smashes his face with a shovel, and together with Carew, they push a shelf over Sydney. Although their current crisis is averted, they must figure out how to get to the van with this. The three slowly make their way through the house as they cautiously spotted by a lone wasp. Because of this, they're forced to hide against the wall, and as they do, Paul holds Julia's hand to reassure her. Just then the wasp flies off, allowing the three to continue their escape. Later they find an exit but are unsure where it leads. Carruthers volunteers to check it out, but then a wasp suddenly drags him into the exit's opening. Paul and Julia try to help him, but Carruthers screams at them to leave. Julia gets hysterical, so Paul drags her to safety. They get into a room in time and barricade the Queen as they slowly back away. Sydney curses at the Queen, so she squashes him dead. Meanwhile, Julia cuts a tube that releases gas into the nest. Then she and Paul immediately head. She tells him to drive while she lights up one of the fertilizers and throws it into the nest full of wasps. As they drive away, the whole place catches on fire and the mansion crumbles as it explodes. The two rejoice over their successful escape, but the authorities and the medics then pass by them, and they immediately receive medical care. After this, they awkwardly sit in silence in the A. However, they catch on to the tension between them and copulate in the vehicle. The officer who's about to ask for a statement ends up closing the ambulance door to give them privacy. Meanwhile, one of the officers notices the wasp in front of the van. Just then a cow's head falls from the sky and crushes his skull. Everyone in the scene then the sky. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching. You should check these recaps.